Hello everybody, Christopher from ECGN here. Today I'm joined with Marc Velez. Marc Velez is a past colleague of mine as well as a very accomplished guitarist, a versatile style. He plays a lot of jazz in some groups. He does video game arranging, acoustic playing, even some nylon stuff here and there. He even knows how to play a mandolin, which is really cool. You know, so before we get into this more, hi Marc. Thanks again for joining us today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, places you've played, anywhere else you might have studied, and what music, of course, means to you?
My name's Marc, like he so kindly introduced me. I am mostly a guitarist. I touch other instruments from time to time, so a bit of piano, a bit of bass, a bit of mandolin, trying banjo. It's going. I studied at NJCU. I was a jazz performance major, but since then I've kind of dipped my toes into a little bit of everything. So a lot of folky stuff, a lot of rock stuff, especially through teaching, a lot of pop stuff. And more recently I've gotten into a lot of Japanese music, so I have found myself playing a lot of Japanese city pop from the 80s. It's been a lot of fun. And I think above all else, especially over the past year or so, I found myself getting much more involved in video game music in particular. And I think video game music, in a lot of ways, most directly connected to me to why I love and appreciate music. Because it creates a experience to be appreciated across mediums. It's not just music for music's sake, but it's music to serve the story of a game or the experience of playing a game. And that's been fun for me since I was a kid, and it's really nice to be able to execute on and capitalize on the music that I grew up with, especially.
Absolutely. Cool. Excellent, man. Yeah, like that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk to you, like myself. Like I do a lot of some video game ranging myself. Like, you know, we're both from the same generation, more or less. You know, that game Guitar Hero. Of course, sometimes I take some of the band music from that and I do like classical guitar arrangements of that. But it's really cool. Like I remember we saw your Final Fantasy video of, I think it's 13, 14? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Final Fantasy 13 video, and we were like, wow, like that is like so like tight, like solid. Good job, bro. Anyway, I've always had a deep admiration for jazz as well, and of course jazz guitar too. And I remember when you shared with me, like, what was it, 2014, 2015, long time ago, boomers over here, right? You shared with me some of Julian Lage's music, and I remember you said he was a great like inspiration for you. So like when you compose or arrange, do you follow like a similar style, or do you just pull inspirations from everywhere, like you said? Because I know you said you dipped your toes in some things. Mm-hmm. How have you broadened your horizons?
That's a good question. I definitely was most pushed into jazz as I was learning guitar. I think it was, other than maybe metal, the genre that influenced and kind of pushed me the most to keep learning more about the guitar and learning more about music. And so that's always remained a part of what I try to do. Usually in the harmony, I try to explore what some would call jazzy harmony on the guitar. But when it comes to arranging, especially for some of the video game stuff, I try not to think too much of a particular style I want to do, as much as the energy I want my arrangement of a song to put out. So you mentioned the Promise, the Final Fantasy 13 video. Mm-hmm. I thought to do something with my acoustic instruments. I really wanted to work on my mandolin a little bit more, and I just wanted to try some different things on the acoustic guitars in general. And so it turned into this like mostly folky kind of vibe, because you have 2 acoustic guitars, maybe 3, and a mandolin going. But I tried to take harmony that wasn't as true to the song, honestly. I varied a little bit more, and I kind of pushed into the direction that I just wanted the song to have. It's a little selfish to take somebody else's song and completely do your own thing with it, but I think it makes it a little bit more fun and a little bit more true to myself as well.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, when you do arrangements and covers, like we all take those kinds of liberties. But yeah, I think that's really good. You know. So when you do, when you like play, have you played all the games that you've made arrangements for, or are you just like internet surfing and you're like, oh, that's a cool soundtrack, like on YouTube or the OSTs, etc., and then you make the arrangement after? Because there's times where like I'm like like I'll be studying, I'll be reading, or like I'm in between practice sessions at home, and like I'll throw on some lo-fi, or I'll throw on another performer, or I'll throw in an OST, and I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I want to do something with that later, and I'll just write it down in my journal or something. Like, do you have a similar process?
I think all of the covers I've shared are games I've played. So even the smaller covers I've done on Instagram, like the Roost from Animal Crossing, I've played Animal Crossing games, so I'm familiar with the music through the experience of playing them. And I think all of the covers I've put on YouTube, so Final Fantasy IV I've played, Final Fantasy 13 I've played, Legend of all the Zelda covers I've done, or all the little snippets of things I've posted, I've definitely played all of those. And I'm trying to think of any others. Yeah, a National Park I had uploaded I think 2 years ago, and that's probably one of my favorite soundtracks of all time. So I've played that game inside and out. And so I think for me, the music I end up wanting to arrange is music that I've personally connected with in the first place. And usually through video game music, that connection comes from actually playing the game. Good example of that, and this one's funny. So I don't always find the music through playing. The game Risk of Rain 2, one of the songs showed up on a weekly playlist on Spotify, and I just heard this really heavy pushing metal track, and I was like, wow, what is this? I checked the album, and it's a video game. Sure enough, I go home, I buy the game, and I end up falling in love with it. Stuff like that happens too, but usually I'm not going to arrange something that I haven't at least tried playing or tried working through a little bit, just because I feel like I'm missing the point of the music if I don't understand the source of it.
Cool. All right, sweet. Yeah, for me, it's like the same thing, man. Like for like a game like I mentioned Guitar Hero and whatnot. Of course, those are like just so much music in there, like Rockman and whatnot. For like a video game, like the soundtrack that really like came to me a lot was like Kingdom Hearts, you know. So like I understand you completely. If you had to choose, say, 3 video game soundtracks, what would you pick? You have to choose 3. There's no door number.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
I am really bad at ranking things. I tend to be very attached to the things that I like. I think top of the list, both for the quality of the music and nostalgia, probably the Pokemon Gold, Silver, Crystal games. I think nearly every song on that soundtrack is gorgeous, and then you have things like Cyanwood or Azalea Town, National Park, even the surf theme in that game, all of them are just beautiful melodies. It kind of takes, to me, some of the energy and some of like the really strong themes you get from a lot of those earlier Nintendo games, like the original Zelda, the original Mario games. You get the strength of those melodies, but you get a very, very different context for those melodies. And it's a lot of fun for me. So that's probably just like a lifetime number 1 for me. Number 2, it's really hard. I'm gonna go with, can I like lump the early Final Fantasy games together?
Yeah.
It's really hard. So I'm gonna say like, especially Final Fantasy IV and Final Fantasy VI, but even 2, just a lot of those earlier ones in general. A lot of the Nobuo Uematsu stuff. Again, same thing, beautiful melodies, but I think the difference with the Final Fantasy games and those soundtracks versus the Pokemon soundtracks is there's a lot of drama in them. There's a lot more kind of emotion being pushed through that's echoed through the story of the game. And it's just so good. So things like the character themes, like Rose's theme from Final Fantasy IV, Rydia's theme from Final Fantasy VI, Dancing Mad is... If anybody watching this hasn't heard Dancing Mad, just go listen to Dancing Mad. It is a trip from beginning to end. It's a very long trip. It's 23 minutes, I think, for the track officially, but a lot of that old video game stuff looped anyway, so it's not too bad to get through. And even Final Fantasy XII, things like Castle Pandemonium, the battle themes, all of that stuff just had such great energy, such strong melodies, such interesting compositions that it's hard for me to separate, especially the early Final Fantasy games. Number 3, this is me trying not to choose just old games, especially now, that these games are 30 plus years old. Genshin Impact actually has some of my favorite video game music right now. I got into the game because of the music again, kind of like a Risk of Rain situation where I heard the music first. And since getting into the music of that game, I have gotten really, really into the music of other cultures. And I have found myself really, really, really wanting to play a few Chinese instruments now, which should hopefully happen in the next year or two. But that game has beautiful melodies, beautiful orchestration, and because it's based on different regions and different cultures, the music changes or has so much variety. I can't help but love it. Those are my three. To summarize, Pokemon Gold, Silver, Crystal. I'm lumping Final Fantasy games together, but if you put a gun to my head, I would say Final Fantasy VI, and then Genshin Impact for a more modern game.
Cool. Yeah, those are all wonderful selections. I played a few of those myself. I know quite a selection of characters from like other games that I've seen and whatnot. But I'll be sure to check out some of the OSTs, the soundtracks, and whatnot. And that's like really good stuff. Being a classical guitarist predominantly myself, it's very common for us just to take lessons, like private lessons, with classical guitarists. And when we give lessons as guitarists, we can teach whatever, classical, acoustic, electric. Now, in the versatile guitarists such as yourself, and in the jazz area, at least I've seen maybe one or two people. Isn't it also pretty common for them, like, hey, I'm taking a lesson with like this drummer right now, like, although I play guitar, or I'm taking a lesson with this pianist, with this trumpet player. Like, what's the? And of course, you take lessons with a guitarist, but like, what's that? What is that? How the approach in those lessons? Does it feel different than any other applied or private lesson, or is it very more informative because you guys are talking more about, say, a language rather than your instrument?
Yeah, I think so. In college, I had my guitar lesson with Paul Myers, which were amazing. I learned a lot, and I still use and take from a lot of that information now. But in my last year, I took a second set of lessons with great trumpet player Nathan Eklund. And I think the big difference there is that I'm walking into the room knowing that the guitar doesn't matter in a sense. A trumpet player isn't going to look at the things I do and care about the way that I'm picking or care about the way I'm fretting my notes. He just cares that it sounds good, that it feels good, and that it fits the language you'd expect, especially within like a jazz school kind of context. He wants to make sure I'm playing good lines, playing clear lines, making sure everything's moving the way it's supposed to, or the way it should. Whereas in a guitar lesson, a guitarist is going to see another guitarist and comment on their picking or their fingerings or how they're moving from chord to chord, which voicing they're playing. And so it was really refreshing because I got to kind of leave myself as a guitarist at the door and just walk in worried about my jazz musicianship. And it allowed me to focus on it in a very different way that let me build my fundamentals in a more meaningful and impactful way, especially.
Cool. Yeah, I mean that's like so interesting. Like one of my first guitar teachers, like he also played. He was quite the cellist and violinist. He was actually my orchestra director. Mm-hmm. So when I first started meeting with him about classical guitar lessons, it was like really cool to talk to him because I felt like I was talking to like a cellist. But then like as we like talking more, he was like, no, my primary is classical guitar, and then like he started sharing with me more. I was like, holy crap, that most certainly is, So that stuff's really cool. But yeah, hey Mark, I want to say thank you again so much for meeting with us today and doing this segment for our page. Would you like to play something for us?
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
I'll do a bit of Kakariko Village from Zelda: Link to the Past, but a very different take on it than the arrangement I've already done, so it'll be fun.